Thank you for tuning into this video. In this series of talks called Talks from Any Architect, I hope to explore points which I think are important but usually are not brought out in the field of architecture. This is meant for architects, especially fresh architects and students who I believe should be told the entire story of architecture. I hope all these videos will help you navigate your career both sensitively and fruitfully. In my first talk, I proposed a wider and simpler definition on what architecture truly is. Architecture is all about setting the context for humanity, for some context or the other. I will mainly be concentrating on the built environment, but I'll also talk about computing and cyberspace as I work a lot in that context also. So it should be useful for even software architects and IT people. The need for humans to control and manage the context very finely is deeply rooted in the history of human evolution. It goes way back hundreds of thousands of years. In the very early days of the human species, the context we were talking about was mainly the physical context, that is architecture of the physical world around us. But as society became more complex, we also got entangled in other contexts too. In fact, I would say this context setting is one major reason which differentiates us from other animals. Victor Papanek in his book Design for the Real World explains this quite well. All other animals, that is other than us humans, will take it on themselves to do something on their own when facing environmental problems. For example, they may grow fur, shed skin, hibernate, change colors and even migrate when they find that they can't handle a particular ecological context. In one sense, other animals are very modest with no ego. They take the responsibility to handle issues happening from the context around them onto themselves. They make sure that each one would adjust as per the needs of others around. Humans, on the other hand, have to control and often change the context around them. We are simply not built to change ourselves. Nature has not given us that capability. We cannot modify ourselves. We occupy a very lonely branch in the tree of evolution. We don't even have a subspecies. So our way of handling issues from the environment, when you look at it from a natural point of view, is quite unique. Think of ecology as a gigantic jigsaw puzzle where every piece is properly placed, yet each piece is in constant movement metaphorically. Their shapes are changing, and when each shape changes, again a metaphor, the rest of the jigsaw puzzle finally adjusts its own shape to fit together once again. Each take up the responsibility to own the changes they need to do with themselves. Except humans, we never change ourselves. We always have to change the environment, and we do that quite happily. We have no inbuilt mechanism to change ourselves. If you're wondering what evolutionary history has got to do with architecture, I'm sure you will understand soon enough. Architecture schools do not highlight all these, so I need to deliberate over this. Though Victor Papanek did point out the stark difference between us humans and other animals, let me shed another light on this, so you get a balanced point of view. It is my considered opinion that the early ancestors of ours, that is hundreds of thousands years back, were actually not much different from other animals as far as the impact they had on the environment around them. Our ancient ancestors were not evil beings who modified the environment left, right, center. One can even think of those ancient animals quite similar to be of those animals which made some small changes like nests and burrows and things like that. So they actually fitted rather well, I would assume. Now, how did nature allow us, our ancient ancestors, to do this? Because nature gave the other organisms some mechanism, but they didn't give that to us. So nature gave us another set of biological mechanisms, which is actually not really discovered in other animals. And those mechanisms were the ones which we use to modify the environment. We are the only animal to have consciousness, and secondly, we have language, which is actually a part of consciousness. And it is that consciousness which is at work when the person is responding to a force, to any force around that person. For example, if it gets too cold, the person's mind would say, let me cut up that bark of the tree or take the skin of that animal and wrap it around myself. Or the person will say, let me go inside that cave there and light a fire, and so on. So one part of that internal language inside us, we all have that internal language, we speak to ourselves all the time. That some part of that internal meaning which we have inside got exposed to other humans as the spoken language, which is called the mother tongue. Noam Chomsky and others point out that the faculty of human language is actually a biological feature. So humans use language, whether internal or external, that is when you collaborating with others, they talk it out with others to modify the context around that human or humans. But there is a problem there. Human language that allowed discussions of the problem and its solution amongst a set of people is actually quite new. Archaeologists and scientists say that even early form of tools would not have proliferated if humans did not pass on the knowledge about the stone to leave a shaping to others. So language was critical, but it is actually quite new. It is a very new biological phenomena in the history of evolution of human beings. Other than humans, so far no other animals seem to be having it. So language as a process, as a natural process, biological process in the evolution of organism is a very new thing. Some linguists such as Dan Everett claim that language started from the time of Homo erectus, which is one of the ancestors of homo-sapiens. So even if you count from those times of Homo erectus, language has been with us for around say 3 million years or so, which looks like a lot. 3 million looks like a lot, but evolutionarily it is very, very small. There are other organisms who got features over a long period of time. That means this method which we use to solve a problem by collaborating with others using language is actually not a very refined process. We falsely believe that when we humans can sit together with other humans and work out a solution, we can really converge onto the perfect one. It really is very difficult to do that. That's why Victor Papanek dramatically differentiated us from the other animals. The fine dance or the balance of ecology which nature gives to that jigsaw puzzle, there we are like a bull in a china shop many times. We just disrupt everything, especially when we are not aware of all these things. So in short, Homo sapiens are quite intrinsically prone to spoiling the ecological balance. Not because we are evil people or anything. We are still learning and we have to continuously learn. It is that ongoing learning that I have to emphasize here to architects listening to these talks. That's one of the summaries or the takeaways for this talk. So now let me get back to architects coming out of architecture schools. They are often left with the impression that clear communication has happened, they got through the thesis, they got the marks and everything, and they know what really is good architecture. But sadly that is not really so easy or not even correct many times. For thousands of years initially, we did a reasonably good job. I can agree. The effect of us on the world was limited because it was individuals or small groups of people or tribes which was affecting the world. Okay. Now, one more byproduct of this is that we have a deep intuition. All of us have a deep intuition about how to set the context. It is built into us. But after the agrarian revolution and later the industrial revolution, this has changed drastically. As society became complex, individuals started spending time on more abstract activities. People got entangled economically, they were working for somebody else. So they could not exercise their intuition, and with the result, that intuition has become pretty flawed in many people. Okay, and that is the time where we architects have to take the baton and solve problems for somebody else. But unfortunately, our college does not really prepare our students for all this. The reason for me going back to ancient history is to remind ourselves that each act of intervening into a context and setting that context right is a very holy and extremely learned act. There are huge chances of errors for the reasons I already mentioned, because the language is flawed and the way we communicate is flawed and we are taking somebody else's responsibility. Yet, in architecture, there's a concept called architecture determinism. which is to say that an architect believes that they can, zero in onto a very deterministic solution for a problem. Okay, but the thing is, we have to understand, we are trying to set the context on behalf of somebody else. So there itself, there is a loss of meaning and so on and so forth. So I believe the formal field of architecture has put blinkers around our eyes, and we narrow the scope of projects which we put our thoughts on, and then we think we can get architectural determinism. Why? Because the architect can get away with the illusion of architectural determinism, as the clients there tend to be more forgiving. Like, you make a mistake, they say, okay, bad, okay, fine, finally I'll live with that, kind of thing. So this is a serious distortion and oversimplification of our field. And therefore I have to again repeat a point from my earlier talk. Can a physicist or a mathematician or even a musician say that my work is only for a certain set of class of people? Or or should I just concentrate only those who will forgive me for being that expert? So before you think I'm painting a bleak and dystopian picture about architecture, let me end this talk on a positive light. I am of the firm belief that this setting up of the context on behalf of others can be done reasonably well and responsibly. We just have to watch ourselves carefully, keep doing our learning, and behave rationally each step of the way, and leave behind rich information for future connections. For future corrections and even future connections. That is one thing current education don't tell us how to do. In fact, we are not been told that we are depositors of new knowledge into this world. So time and again, I have been touched by various opportunities I got but could not exercise it, where I could have put my training and knowledge to use. The reason I say is that's the irony, right? That those who really need us cannot afford us. There is a lot that needs to change in our field, and I hope I can contribute to clearing up the confusions, misunderstandings, and exploitations. So we architects have to rise up to the challenges and help the whole of society and uplift the entire subject, not just parts of it. And I truly believe that there is a win-win here. And for that, that is where young architects who are struggling in their career, they have to understand that you can actually make money and make sense too, but you have to have a very richer and wider definition of architecture. And I'll explain the methods in the future videos and what I propose. Thank you for listening till here. I hope you will join me next time also. Thank you very much.